Springing forth from the murky bogs of Lake Zava, few inhabitants of Innistrad don't know its tale. This is the Get Her Done Frog. No? That's not what it's called? It's called what? That's stupid. No. Really? Fine. This is the Gitrog Monster. For only 3 colorless, 1 black and 1 green, we get a nasty looking 6 power, 6 toughness frog horror with a veritable library of abilities. First up, why not give it Death Touch? It's not like a 5 mana 6/6 isn't good enough already. The Get Her Done Frog's second ability seems a bit more in line with getting a huge creature, such as he is, out earlier than turn 6. It reads, at the beginning of your upkeep, sacrifice the Gitrog Monster unless you sacrifice a land. Okay, this makes a bit more sense. You've got to be smart when you play him. Let's check out his third ability. You may play an additional land each of your turns. Okay, I guess they can't make him just keep you at whatever mana you're at when you cast him. So it's sort of similar to Oracle of Moldiah, but without the library manipulation. Not bad. Lastly, Gitrog has the following ability. Whenever 1 or more lands are put into your graveyard from anywhere, draw a card. Really? Really? Wow. You might as well change his creature type from frog to value because this guy is insane. So Gitrog is an interesting mix of card advantage, ramp, and undercosted potential. We get all of these wonderful things in a tight 5 mana costing package. On top of that, Golgari already likes to dump stuff in his graveyard with Dredge, so it only makes sense that they should give a commander that can enable Dredge super easily, right? Anyway, enough of my ranting, let's look at how the deck plays out. Early game, well, let's just keep it simple. Don't overextend if you have no way to protect yourself, don't make enemies, and play some decent early drops like Sakura Tribe Elder or Lotus Cobra that work well with lands. Mid-game is where most of, if not all decks grow into their own, and Gitrog is no different. Playing a commander with a land-centric ability, chances are you're going to run a decent amount of ramp, specifically spells like Explosive Vegetation, Nature's Lore, and Skyshroud Claim. You're also going to want to make sure you have ways to manipulate your library. If you've got Gitrog on the field, you want to make sure you're able to get some value out of those 5 mana frogs, so knowing that you'll dredge at least 1 land card is crucial. To that end, even though it seems counterintuitive, Oracle of Moldiah and Courser of Crufix fill this slot nicely. Oracle even helps us get to 3 lands a turn, which is very powerful. Speaking of 3 lands a turn, Azusa, if you can afford her price tag, seems like an all-star for the mid-game. You just have to be careful with when you use her ability. Essentially, you want to make sure that you have a land on top to dredge if you need it, otherwise play the land to ramp you if you don't. I would consider dropping some of the older, self-sacrificing lands with her at this point. We tend to want to go off in the late game, so dropping something like Havenwood Battleground, Crystal Cave, and Ebon Stronghold might lose us a bit of tempo early game, but by late game they can help us draw and ramp into whatever else we need to be casting. So, Golgari has a few options to close out the game. You might have seen it before, possibly in my Marin Primer, or just by playing against the Gitrog Frog, but Machias the Unhallowed and Triskelion are probably everyone's go-to combo for Golgari, and probably numerous other pairings involving black. Another fun win condition can be found in another Golgari EDH commander, Jared, Golgari Lichlord. Flinging creatures is a lot of fun, and Jared is one of the best. Being able to hit everyone at the table is fantastic, and Jared even has a built-in way for us to sacrifice lands and get him back. Worm Harvest can also be a great way to overwhelm your opponents with a lethal amount of worm tokens. The likelihood of your graveyard having a decent amount of lands is very high, and chances are you can pitch those late game land draws to flood the board with more tokens. Lastly, you can always just attack with Gitrog. He's a 4-turn clock on his own, which when coupled with Death Touch means that something's going to die eventually. Now let's look at some cards I suggest running. I think it goes without saying that Crucible of Worlds is probably the best card for this deck. Being able to replay things like Ghost Quarter, Strip Mine, or Fetch lands to draw a card, deny people lands, or just get lands for ourselves is incredibly powerful, and we get to play an extra land because of Gitrog anyway. Along the same lines, Dakmor Salvage is probably one of the strongest land cards in the deck, and 90% of the time it won't even hit the field. Acting as a combo piece as long as you have a discard outlet, pitching Dakmor Salvage will allow you to essentially dredge your entire library. One of the best ways to pitch the aforementioned lands is with Scourge Familiar. Netting you 1 black mana for each time you pitch Dakmor Salvage, Scourge Familiar can generate a ton of mana in very short order. With these 2 cards, we can generate enough mana to enable a lethal Exsanguinate. Another great way to generate not only a ton of mana, but also card draw is through an old enchantment from Visions, Squandered Resources. Now normally you wouldn't want to dump all of your lands, but when this is essentially doubles your mana and can potentially draw you as many cards as you have lands, you can usually find one of your win conditions and cast it on that same turn. This can lead to some potentially huge blowouts for us, but basically make sure you run Caverns of Souls or Boseiju Who Shelters All to prevent any counterspells from screwing up our plan. Back to my earlier thoughts on discard, we can't just run 1 discard outlet, because that would be silly. Thankfully, green and black have a decent amount of options in terms of what our discard outlets can offer us. I would say the two strongest options are Oblivion Crown and Wild Mongrel, two cards that can pump or be pumped, respond to instant speed, and can sometimes be, oops, I swing for lethal with very little setup. We're also going to want ways to sacrifice lands. Zurin Orb, Constant Mists, and Crop Rotation do some amazing work in Titania, so it wouldn't be that much of a stretch to assume they do similarly good work in our Gitrog deck. Speaking of Titania, should be amazing in this deck. Bringing back lands we lost or even fetches and then cracking them to grab a land and get a 3/5 elemental and draw a card is just busted. Strands of Night is another fun interaction card. It isn't cheap, and the activated ability is a pretty stiff requirement, but the instant speed reanimation with the potential to draw a card is exactly the kind of stuff we're looking for. Since starting to make more competitive lists, Necrotic Ooze has easily become one of my favorite black staples for EDH. Being able to use any activated ability in any graveyard for only 4 mana is just such incredible versatility. I can't even imagine what justifications you can come up with to not run this card. Whether you're tapping him for mana or for a game-winning combo, there are very few situations where this will be a dead draw. Well gang, that's my take on the Gitrog horror. I hope you enjoyed it, and as always, if you've played the deck, played against the deck, or want to play the deck, leave a comment with some of your ideas, experiences, or whatever in the comment section below. Thank you guys so much for watching, and be sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe to my videos for more sweet EDH action.